Climate Change Commission Act. Because eventually we'll have a Climate Change Act similar to what's in the US, where we will be defining reduction in carbon emissions over 10 years, 20 years, 30
that
years.
can be another term because this...
That's how they call it in the US, Climate Change Act.
Yeah, pero tayo kasi, this law does not only create the Climate Change Commission, but actually formulates a policy, a framework for the whole government.
We just said that I do natin on Climate Change Act. Climate Change Act.
Climate Change Act tayo.
Ako ay having, after observing what's happening worldwide, especially the legislative work in the US, with regard to measures for climate change, to abate the climate change, mitigate or adapt to climate change, I am inclined to believe that the better title is Climate Change Commission Act of 2009. Because the Climate Change Act, which will be formulated later, will encompass already the specific measures, especially with regard to carbon emissions.
With regards to that, I think because of the creation of the Climate Change Commission, specific bills will emanate because one of the functions of the Commission will be to promote legislation, to encourage legislation with specific policies like the incentives bill proposed earlier by Congressman Lawson. So manganganak yan ng maraming bills which will have different coverage, different titles. So I think for a first, since it's a first climate change law in the Philippines, it sounds good. Climate Change Act. Philippines Climate Change Act. Diba? It creates a Climate Change Commission which will recommend policies, framework, legislation, among many others, and those laws that will emanate from the crafting of this Climate Change Act will be named differently. The Climate Change Incentives Act, the Climate Change Punishing Act, the Climate Change, whatever, code, whatever. I don't know, it's parang mas magandang pakinggan at parang mas powerful. Kung commission lang para create.
I can cite an example. This is the case of the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. There is a Central Banking Act. There is a BSP law. The BSP law refers to the reorganization of the central bank, calling it the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. But there's also a Central Bank Act, which refers to the policies with regard to central banking.
You know, Roy, looking forward and looking at the next 3 years maybe of my term and your term, I doubt if Congress will initiate, file, work this hard to create a climate change act that we envision will have the whole framework for the country. So I can see it will be piecemeal. Incentives, cap and trade, policies, etc. It will be small laws because it's so hard to craft a code or a big act. And so our dream of having that one law to have the framework might be difficult. This commission will be responsible for recommending all those laws we dream of. So it would be good, I think, if we name this the Climate Change Act. It's like the mother law that will bring about the enactment of everything we want to happen. It sounds better for the office.
Well, it does sound better.
It sounds better.
It's a little presumptuous, though.
It is presumptuous
Looking
now.
back now, after discussing this, because when I drafted this was back when climate change was not being debated in the U.S. Senate and the U.S. Congress. But after looking at the substance of the Climate Change Act, compared to this is just creating the commission. This is just reorganizing the central bank, using my own example, as compared with amending the central banking laws. The Central Banking Laws Amendment can be rightfully called the Central Banking Act, etc., etc.
Actually,
well, the BSP law is the law that created the Bangko Sentral ng Philippines.
I understand. However, let us not put a tag maybe or simplify the work we have done in 2 years, because it's really not just the mere creation of a commission. We actually already included a framework for policies. We gave powers and functions inexistent in other government offices. So we actually created a framework for policies to happen and basis for legislation to ensue in both houses. So we created more than a commission, because a commission it's like a house with no pillars and no interiors. We created everything possible. So we actually created an act. What we need now are specific legislation to address each sector.
But, okay, Madam Chair, having looked at the initial, especially the Section 1 and Section 2 Declaration of Policy, I guess we can use the Declaration of Policy Section 2 as the foundation of our bill, so that we can rightfully call it the Climate Change Act of 2009, with the creation of the Climate Change Commission as being part of it.
Yes.
So,
yes, exactly.
Yeah, if we frame it that way,
you have
because
said
we focused our discussion on the Climate Change Commission.
which is only part of the whole.
But have we focused a lot on Section 2, then we can probably call this Climate Change Act of 2009.
You put it very simply, the creation of the commission is just part of the whole declaration of policy, except that when we opened, we said, let's just focus on our disagreeing provisions, and most of the disagreeing provisions were merely on the structure, on the powers and functions, and the budget. And we actually did not even debate or discuss the declaration of policy, which we all agree on anyway.
So in that case, maybe what we can do, in the spin, I'm sorry to call the word, no? In the spin, we focus on the declaration of policy.
Yes, yes.
And mention the creation of the Climate Change Commission as part of
yes,
the
that's
realization of the policy being declared by the Act.
Very good. You have summarized everything that we've done.
Thank you, ma'am.
And justified the presumptuous title of the record. Not presumptuous, work hard for it.
Just one last point, Madam Chair.
As long as you want to change the title.
No one. Yung pong qualifications ng commissioners.
Pakinggan, author ka ng climate change. Commission lang pala ginawa mo. Ito ginawa mo
Yung pong qualifications ng commissioner.
I just wanted
must be a scientist. We're going to provide for a degree, for example, in physics.
To identify
the scientific name.